Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today we are going to be looking at Osmodeus Landscapes versus Skyland. Now the reason I decided to do this was because there's no point comparing textures to vanilla textures anymore. We know they're going to look better. It's a waste of time, it's a bit boring to watch now, so I decided that because this is primarily a landscape texture overhaul, that we will put it up, pit it against Skyland, which is also a landscape texture overhaul. So, what do we need to disclose? We are using MREN's retextures. I don't think that's going to play an important part in the video, but just letting you know it's there. And we also have Osmodeus Cities and Stoneworks still enabled. So Skyland is compatible with all those mods, and those mods are present in the before and after, or the Osmodeus versus Skyland clips. So let's jump straight in. So here we're just outside Riften, and as you can see, we've got a nice little shot of some grass there. You can see individual blades of grass, a bit of dirt and dust mixed in with them. It's quite a nice texture, a nice amount of detail in there. It is during foggy weather, so that's why it's a bit murky. And as we bring Skyland in, as you can see, that's not as nice, and that's not the case for all these comparisons, as you'll see as we go on. But that texture really does not compete with the Osmodeus landscapes at all. So moving on. Next up, we're in Falkreath, and we're looking at a stone path here. Very nice. Very nice indeed. A lot of detail there. Nice amount of contrast between the dark and the light areas. A nice amount of detail as well. It's a nice crisp texture. And as we move on to Skyland, there we go. Just as nice, but in different ways. That's a bit more natural, but again, it's a really great texture. I'm inclined to say that this one maybe is a draw, although if some people were to say they thought the Osmodeus stone path looked better, I certainly wouldn't tell them they were wrong. And here we're just outside Falkreath again, and we're looking at the stone and rock textures. Now this is where Skyland blows Osmodeus out the water, in my opinion. We have seen this stone texture before in the Osmodeus Cities and Stoneworks video, so fairly familiar with that. And there's Skyland, and that is a beautiful texture for some stones, if I may say so myself. Again, as you can see, the Osmodeus Stoneworks is still in effect on that Falkreath wall there. So again, the two mods are compatible, but Skyland definitely wins this one. And here we got more of a general shot of a lot of shrubs and grass and greenery, just to see how the two hold up. Not expecting to see a massive amount of change in these two clips, because neither of them really deal with adding more grass or foliage or anything like that. But as you can see, Skyland to me again just looks a lot more natural, and I think that is to do with the fact that the contrast and the saturation on the colours is a lot nicer there. There isn't very much change at all texture wise between those two clips. It is purely down to colour balance, and I think Skyland again just wins out over Osmodeus on that one. Here we are on the hill just behind Winstad Manor, and we're looking at snow textures. I am not too sure if this is purely down to Osmodeus, because I have seen that texture on quite a few different mods with the little bits of ice crystals mixed in there. But Skyland does attempt to change that texture, and it's not for the better, I have to say. That's kind of blocky, murky. It's nowhere near as nice as the one that's on Osmodeus, even if it may not be Osmodeus that adds in that texture. I could be wrong, but as I've said, I have seen that texture on a few videos now at least. So I'm going to give that one to Osmodeus regardless. Here we're just outside Whiterun, and we're looking at some cabbages in some dirt. I was doing this just to see if any of the main foliage really changes. It doesn't. Across the two mods, they don't really bother changing much of the plants. They give you recommended mods to do that yourself, but the dirt does change, and again I'm going to give this one to Skyland. I think that texture just looks a bit more natural. It looks a bit more like dried dirt in the sun. Again, both textures are quite nice, but if I had to choose between the two, I would give it to Skyland. And moving on, again just outside Whiterun, and we're looking at this mossy grass type texture that grows on the rocks here. It's, you know, it does what it does. It's not a bad texture at all. It's not my favourite texture that I've seen, but it certainly isn't a bad texture. It's got a nice amount of detail in it, and that is all I can say about that really. So we're going to move on. And when we bring Skyland in, we can see the texture does go a bit more murky there. I am inclined to say maybe, just maybe, a little bit more detail is in the Skyland one, but the sacrifice there seems to be at the cost of the colour. A lot of the green has been taken out, so we do get more of a dank, dark, murky texture. I would, at a push, say I'd probably want the Osmodeus texture here, just because it is a bit more colourful. And as you've probably garnered, I do like a nice amount of colour. Here we're looking at a tree trunk halfway between Whiterun and Silent Moon's camp. Neither of the mods seem to really deal with wood textures. I know Osmodeus has said that it is going to add in wood textures, but at this time it doesn't really have many wood textures in. And the same is for Skyland, doesn't really seem to make an attempt there to improve the wood textures. Again, Skyland is a bit more murkier than, or a bit less colour, sorry, than Osmodeus, which seems to just have a little bit more colour in those textures. But other than that, not much to say. Let's move on. Here we are again, just outside Whiterun, in this little wooded area. And as you can see, we've got a nice amount of foliage here, but none of that is really going to change across the two clips. As I said, both mods do have the recommended mods for grass and stuff like that, but you will see the grass under that foliage change when we bring in Skyland. And also, again, you can see that the saturation on those colours is just a bit nicer than on Osmodeus. So again, just purely for the colour balance there, I would go with Skyland. And here we are again, just looking across the fields. I always like to do these type of long landscape shots when I do these type of videos. You won't really see the textures in high detail or anything like that, but you will get a general idea of the whole general feel of a mod pack by doing this. Again, Osmodeus looks quite nice. Skyland again looks quite nice. Again, this would be down to your personal preference. Both mods have the merits really in this clip, and again, I would say that the stone textures look nicer on Skyland than they do on Osmodeus, and we're going to see that in a bit more detail on the next clip coming up, which is just outside the Markarth. It's the Markarth stables, and again, we're going to primarily be looking at the stone textures in the background on this one. As I've said a few times now, Osmodeus stone texture doesn't really grab me. It's not the nicest I've seen, but Skyland certainly does look a lot more natural, and seems again to be a little bit higher in detail. It's a strange one, because if you go up close, both textures kind of reveal a few blemishes. Skyland on a few of its textures does look a bit more like, you know, not as crisp as Osmodeus, but from this distance, Skyland absolutely wins hands down again for me. We're looking at several things here, primarily the bridge. Both mods do improve bridges and some of the smaller structures outside the cities. Osmodeus says it's only done a few bridges, and it's gonna be doing more of those in the future. But Skyland also has a go at the bridge texture, and as you can see there, maybe a bit smoother, but at the cost of some detail maybe. I think the Osmodius texture does look a bit nicer than the Skyland one there on the bridge. But Skyland does have that more natural rock texture there. Again, this is down to your personal preference, which one you prefer. No change to the tree or the juniper berry bush there on the right. Here we are at what's it called, Lakeview Manor, and this is the little stone, well, the little dirt patch just outside. And as you can see, that's a very nice texture. It looks very photorealistic to me. Nice drag cracked dirt again there. Skyland, maybe not as much detail, but it does appear to be more 3D. You can see there's some shadow cast off little mounds of dirt there, and it's not a bad texture in itself. It certainly doesn't look as crisp as Osmodius, but it does have its own merits. Again, I think I'd have to give it to Skyland for that one. Here we've got a close-up of the dirt texture. Again, Osmodius, very nice, very crisp. You can see all the detail there, individual blades of grass, some twigs and stones and dirt mixed in. If you look at the patch just on the right hand side of the centre of the screen. And as we bring in Skyland, again, a very nice texture there. We've still got the detail with the twigs and stuff like that. We've got more of a dirt texture, a lot more browns in there. It looks a bit warmer than Osmodius. And again, I think you can see this one coming. I'm going to give it to Skyland. And for our final clip, we're at High Hrothgar, and primarily going to be looking at that light texture just across that snow ice there. Again, very nice, looks kind of photorealistic to me. We've got a really, it looks like solid packed snow. I really love that effect. Skyline kind of drops the ball on this one though as we bring it in. As you can see, the nighttime is a lot brighter than it was with Osmodius, and we don't really get that cool effect which we had with the previous clip, but you do get a bit more detail in the snow there, and I don't know if that's down to the fact that the screen is brighter so that you can see more detail there. But just a quick look at the load order here, just so you can see how I've got it. As you can see, I've got Emrens running, I've got Osmodius running, and then I've got Skyland at the bottom. If you wanted Osmodius instead of Skyland, you would just put Osmodius there instead of Skyland, which you can see I've got just at the bottom. Let me know which one you guys think looks the best. I know there is a lot of support out there for Osmodius at the moment, but I do believe that Skyland has just reduced its file size by quite a bit by going down to 1K textures, not really at the cost of quality in my opinion. But that's the end of another episode. I shall see you next time.